Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with works that are going to be in trouble in the 20th century. And of no composer is this more true, in my opinion, than Tchaikovsky. Now, it's not going to be an issue. It's not like Tchaikovsky's going to die. It's like we're not going to hear Tchaikovsky. And it's not going to be an issue with things like the violin concerto or the first piano concerto, works that the great soloists will always have in their repertoire that'll get played regularly because they draw audiences. Things are going to get played. But are we going to hear great performances of those things? And my iconic work, I know a lot of you will probably be thinking, the Poetique Symphony. But no, the problem goes much deeper than that. I would start with Romeo and Juliet. I mean, when was the last time you even heard Romeo and Juliet? The thing about Tchaikovsky is that he is so out of fashion that performances of his most popular works are much fewer and farther between, or at least recordings of them, than they used to be. And most of the recent recordings that I've heard have been really tepid. The namby-pamby school of Tchaikovsky conducting, which is just terrifying to contemplate, in my view, because, he's not only one of the great composers, but he's one of the great examples of what music can express and how powerfully it can express it. And to give a performance that welches on that is it's like a crime. It's just awful. Absolutely awful. Not only that, we all agree, at least most people agree, that Tchaikovsky was not, exactly a formal wizard when it came to structuring pieces. He revised things a lot. He was a little uncertain as to form, and he gets away with it. He gets away with it because his melodies are so gorgeous. Oh my God, who cares? When a tune is so beautiful, what difference does it make how many times you repeat it or if you can develop it? Who cares? And his orchestration is glorious. And you just have to give it 110%. And then issues of construction or other technical and logistical things just fall by the wayside, which is as it should be, because gorgeousness is itself an element of form. I mean, it's impossible to categorize the way people, analyze harmonic things and formal things, in the German school of musical analysis, which is what most of our musical analysis is. But there's no question that being completely transported into a state of emotional ecstasy is a formal gambit if you can get away with it. And Tchaikovsky could get away with it and did get away with it more often than not. And Romeo and Juliet is a case in point because it is full of pitfalls for the conductor. First, there's the introduction, which is very long and it needs to move. Most performances, sometimes even some very good ones, spend way too much time dealing with Friar Lawrence. Do, 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 do. How long can that go on for, right? And then, of course, it almost gets to the exciting parts a couple of times. It has a couple false climaxes before you finally get to the allegro. The transition into the allegro, just those chords. Initially that passage, the fight music, with its fugatos and fake counterpoint and stuff, it's not played with the full orchestra. It's mostly timpani and strings with some woodwinds going, what up, it's very Tchaikovsky-ish. That has to be played with extraordinary punch and rhythmic acuity, even before the cymbals and bass drum come crashing in and the whole orchestra goes nuts. From the very start, it has to be incredibly exciting, and then you have to screw up the tension more and more and more and more until you get to the big brass, and then it cuts off. And the love music comes in, and the love music comes in midstream, remember. It's not from the beginning. You don't actually get all of it until later on in the piece. And so you've got to have the drama, the suddenness. It's such a brilliant piece of writing. It really is. And also it's formally magnificent. It's fabulous. So all I can say is the number of performances that get all of these things right is, even back in the day, it was a tough piece to do really, really well. It was almost always effective because Tchaikovsky really, it's so well written that it's sort of hard to screw up, but it still has to be really, really, really powerful. And then the coda also has to keep flowing. That final timpani crack where the two of them are dead. I mean, that's got to be like a cannon shot. And you don't need to add like extra percussion or anything there if the timpanist knows what they're doing. I just, for me, that's the iconic Tchaikovsky work. Everything else that will cause problems for today's conductors flows from that. And so you'll have problems with the Fourth Symphony. Even someone like Manfred Honeck, who is really good at that romantic excess kind of stuff, and he'll add things and reorchestrate bits. And he's old school in that sense. But his Tchaikovsky Fourth was lousy. His Pathétique was very good, but the Fourth, no. His Fifth was very good. I really, and if he can't get the ball right, who will? I mean, who's really, really into that music, unashamedly, hard-on sleevedly into, expressing what that music does? I really don't know. It's going to be something we'll have to consider on a case-by-case basis. I'm not saying, of course, that there won't be great performances of Tchaikovsky. There will be. But they will be one-offs. At this point, there isn't anybody out there who can say that they specialize or that they have a particular feeling for the music of Tchaikovsky. And 40 years ago, there were a dozen conductors who included Tchaikovsky in their daily bread repertoire and could do him magnificently, never mind whatever else their inclinations were. I mean, you had Bernstein, you had Karajan, it was a terrific Tchaikovsky conductor. You had Schulte, who was doing it regularly. You had oh my goodness, I mean, there's just so many names. Markevich. Markevich is a particularly interesting case because Markevich was a modernist and a neoclassicist and an emotionally cool conductor, and he did fantastic Tchaikovsky because he understood the idiom. Hell, Stravinsky understood the idiom. They just got it. And, we have Leonard Slatkin, who's still with us, thank God, who can do really fine Tchaikovsky. Andrew Litton did really fine Tchaikovsky, or does really fine Tchaikovsky. There are a few out there who I know are, still into the Russian music thing. Of Russian conductors, there are very few. Think about it. I mean, Gergiev is kind of in disgrace at this point. Pletnev is just weird. Tchaikovsky was horrible. It's boring for the most part. We've got Yurovsky. Thank God, Yurovsky could do it really, really well. He's the best recent Tchaikovsky guy with the LPO. That was a magnificent cycle. So, there are a few people around, but it's not the daily bread of most conductors anymore. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how, as the new century continues, if there is a resurgence of interest in music of that kind of overt color and emotionalism and visceral appeal, or if it's going to remain a seldom heard really well musical event. I'm curious to see what's going to happen, and I'm looking forward to the new recordings to see what these conductors are able to do. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.